Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. I'm glad to see you on my YouTube channel. Please, you're welcome. I will be happy to read your comments and your questions, and I will try to answer to your questions if I can. As usual, our midweek live stream is here. And first of all, I wanted to ask you guys which day is more convenient for you, when Wednesday or Thursday, because sometimes I do my live streams on Wednesday, sometimes I do my live streams on Thursdays. It depends on my work and how busy I am, and other things. And I suffered from migraine yesterday, for example, again, so it's unpredictable, always unpredictable. But to be honest, I want to stick to one day, one particular day. And I just wanted to ask you which day is more convenient for you, which day you like more, Wednesday or Thursday. Please let me know in the comments, and let's begin again. Thank you very much for joining my live stream today. Thank you. I don't mind either days. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So you don't mind when I switch. Sometimes I'm on Wednesdays, sometimes I'm on Thursdays. Okay, so let's talk about a news hot topic today. Shooting down the Russian military transport plane Il-76, Il-76. This is the main news today in the Russian media, in Russia and outside Russia, in the independent Russian media as well, and of course in Ukraine, one of the main news today. So we will talk about, first of all, what we know about the situation. We will talk about that briefly, because after that, I'm going to to analyze the main narratives of the Russian propaganda about what happened to Il-76, because it's very important. There are several narratives involved, both old and new, and I will try to give you the whole picture and explain why Russia is pushing this or that narrative right now. And of course, we don't know all the details yet, because it just happened like a day ago, actually today. Of course, we know, we don't know much, but at least we can talk about what kind of information is given to people on media, on Russian media, and Russian state media, and we can analyze that information. So, what do we know if we are talking about just news itself? What do we know about what happened to that plane? The military plane went down in Russia's Belgorod region. In the general headquarters in Ukraine, they noted that the plane was carrying missiles for S. 300 air defense systems. After the downing of the Russian Il-76, a number of Russian media outlets in Russia circulated statements by Andrei Kartapolov. He is a chairman of the Russian State Duma's Defense Committee. Committee of Duma of Russian Parliament. That was and That guy Andrei Kartapolov was saying that plane was allegedly carrying dozens of Ukrainian prisoners of war, 65 Ukrainian prisoners of war, who were being transported for exchange. And it is true that the exchange was scheduled for January 24th, but it has not yet taken place. It never happened. And for now, nobody knows why. Uh, we will know later, but now we only have like different versions of what happened. But the fact is that yes, it was planned for January 24th, but it never happened. And what we know for sure, that the plane was shut down. That's a fact. But other than that, all other things are mostly like versions, right? And we still didn't see any evidence that those people were on that plane, and that they were that they died. So there is no like 100% proof of that. So, however, Russia pushes the narrative that Ukraine killed its own people. It's the main Russia's narrative now, and that Ukraine is so cruel. They killed its own people, they killed its own soldiers, and the most important thing that they not only killed their own people, they killed them with the help of the Western weapons. So it's very important to understand why are they pushing this particular narrative, because it's the part of the of one big narrative. I would say maybe the main propaganda narrative in Russia since the full-scale war started. It's a narrative about that Russia is fighting, is not fighting with Ukraine or against Ukraine. Russia is fighting against NATO. Russia is fighting with the Western world, and the Western world, United States and European countries, this is the source of evil, if you will. And Russia is against the whole world. And that evil, the Western world, is trying to fight Russia with the help of such countries as Ukraine, like weaker, smaller countries that are easy to manipulate. This is the main Russia's narratives they have been maintaining throughout the whole full-scale war since the war began. And we will talk about that narrative later as well. So the main narratives, as I said, about that plane, and it's everywhere, all over Russian media, state media, social media, Telegram channels, and in the statements of the Russian politicians, they all say the same thing. Ukraine is such a cruel state, such a we told you, it's a Nazi state. They're so cruel. They kill people. They not only killing like other people, they kill their own people. And you can see it everywhere now in the Russian media. And what is going on in the Russian media and social media now actually looks like a planned and prepared informational campaign. I'm going to analyze, as I said, the main narratives they use. And by the way, I highly recommend you to read the article written by Ukrainian journalists from Realna Gazeta. I will put the link in the comments. They put together all propaganda messages and showed chronologically how the campaign started and continued. First of all, they noticed that several propagandists immediately declared that the people who died on board were Ukrainian war prisoners, and they referred those people who wrote the posts, Russian propagandists, they referred to the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, although at that time there was no such statement in the channel of this Russian agency. So my point is, or not my point, but the point of those journalists who noticed that, the point is that they actually wrote their post and they were synchronized, like within 5 minutes, they wrote the same post, different propagandists like Vladimir Solovyov and Olga Skabeyeva and different Telegram bloggers. They wrote almost the same post, that prisoners of war were killed on that plane. They named the number, 65 people, and they did it before actually the Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed it. So they did it ahead of time, and they posted their messages, as I said, at the same time, like they were synchronized. And then, so the propagandists were kind of the first ones, and then only after them, the official agencies and the Russian politicians, they started making statements about what happened. For example, the head of Russian Duma, Vyacheslav Volodin, said the US and European lawmakers need to realize who they are funding. It's a Nazi regime nurtured by Biden, Scholz, and Macron. They shot their own soldiers whose wives and mothers were waiting for them, shot defenseless pilots who were on a humanitarian mission. They shot them with American and German missiles. End of quote. And again, I will remind you, it was a quote from the statement of the head of Russian Duma, Vyacheslav Volodin. So the propaganda messages started to multiply after that, and they even added some details they couldn't know. Actually, they couldn't they couldn't see. For example, as the journalists of Realnaya Gazeta noticed, the Il-76 crew turned the plane away from the village of Yablonovo at the last moment, and the residents supposedly saw it with their own eyes. Moreover, the local priest wants to serve a liturgy because, they kind of sacrificed their lives, because at the last moment they turned from the village, they saved the lives of the people of the whole village, and that's why the priest will dedicate a special liturgy in their honor, in their memory. And so you see how even the legends about those pilots and that planes start to appear. And as I said, the messages, propaganda messages, start to multiply, and we see different details and different versions of what happened. So some additional information. Let me look at the chat. I see that you are writing something. Sorry, I'm late. You can watch the beginning, rewatch the beginning later. Just like the prison where the orcs castrated our heroes, Mark says, possibilities. There was no prisoners of war, but it was radar plane, A-50 like, or transporting troops or weapons. And second possibility, Russia used POW as shields, so Ukrainians will stop shooting on planes. I actually think that Russia probably could use prisoners of war, Ukrainian prisoners of war, but for the other purpose. I think not as shields. They could do it just to provoke that kind of situation. They could have put them on the plane without saying anything to Ukraine. And actually, we have not like 100% confirmation, but some people in Ukraine, they say, people who are in charge for the exchange and of the prisoners of war, they say that they didn't, if they put people on the plane, we didn't know about that. They didn't tell us anything, because usually they transport people on the ground. They wouldn't use that kind of plane to transport prisoners of war. So if they did it, they didn't say anything to the Ukrainian side on purpose. And that's how the Ukrainian side didn't know that that part of the sky was like not safe. So maybe the whole situation, if they were on that plane, if we suppose that they were on that plane and that really happened and people died, I don't want to think about it, but if we think about it, maybe it happened that way, because Russians might have provoked that kind of situation to blame Ukraine after that. And that was only like one narrative I was talking about, that Ukraine is killing its own people. But we will talk about some other narratives, because now it's the whole situation represents, actually in a miniature, it represents the whole propaganda propaganda structure, the structure of Russian propaganda now, the whole, the whole package of narratives, all the main Russia's narratives about Ukraine are in this situation. And it happens every time when something significant happens, when something significant like that happens. Okay, let me read another different messages. The prisoners probably already fell out of the window before loading plane. Christopher says, will we ever know the truth? We need people sick of putting inside the orc. Okay, will we ever know the truth about the plane? No, I'm sure we will. Eventually, we found out the truth about the plane that was shot above Donetsk region. You remember that MH17? And at first, we didn't know the truth, but several years passed. Unfortunately, it took several years to find out who was guilty. And people found out the truth, and it was confirmed, and now we know for sure. Yes, I'm sure we will know the truth about things like that. I think it was their own aerial defense that brought down the plane. You mean Russia's? Maybe we don't know. That's exactly what I mean. Yes, yes, that's what we were talking about. I agree with Bill. Ukraine acknowledged they shot it down. Yes, Ukraine acknowledged, but they had no idea. If people were there, Ukraine had no idea, because there is a whole process. I'm not a specialist. I don't know how it happens, but apparently the sides who are doing the exchange, that's a humanitarian mission, so people are exchanging some information ahead of time, so they know the conditions of the exchange, and they tell each other how it would be happening. So apparently some rules were broken, if people were on that plane, because the Ukrainian side were not told about, they didn't know about anything about that. Okay. The crash wreckage showed the plane was empty. It probably that is another possibility, that plane was empty, because we still haven't seen any proof that any bodies were there. We didn't see bodies, or we didn't see dead people, so we didn't see that kind of proof. And let's go back to the narrative, to the different narratives. So the main narratives, I will name them. I counted like four main narratives here. First one is Ukraine bombs itself. It kills its own people. And it's a very old narrative. It's a narrative that was created in 2014, so 10 years ago, after the annexation of Crimea. It became one of the main narratives of Russian propaganda. When something happened in the Donetsk region and Lugansk region, they would say that Ukraine bombs itself. Ukraine is shelling its own cities, its own villages, and they kill their own people. So it even became like a meme. So even in the situations when it was 100% obvious that Russia did it, they would say that Ukraine did it and Ukraine bombs itself. Even when it didn't make any sense, like there was no logic. But that was the main narrative. And they continued that narrative when the full-scale war started. So they picked up that narrative from 10 years ago, and they started using it again. For example, a Russian lawmaker and Putin supporter, Russian politician, Sergei Mironov, he wrote a post today, quote, "They killed their own prisoners of war. It wasn't done by accident," he says. "The leaders of the Kiev regime and their masters do not want any normalization. They want more blood, death, and hatred," end of quote. And they all post the same things, almost like word to word, the same, like copy paste. It's a little bit different, but it's the same phrasing, like they kill their own people, they kill their own prisoners of war. And by the way, that guy Mironov, Sergei Mironov, by the way, it's just an interesting detail for you. He and his wife recently adopted a child taken from the orphanage from Ukraine. And different investigative media, independent investigative media, they found out, yes, it was Mironov, and the girl was taken from the orphanage. And of course, it was illegal. So it's like kidnapping kids from Ukraine and bringing them to the Russian territory. And Mironov with his wife, they came and took this girl and changed her name. It was a very, very small girl. So they changed her last name, they changed her first name, and the journalists, they know her name, the old one and the new one. But Mironov keeps denying what he did. So it's all like in secret, and it doesn't make any sense for me. If you think about it, I just recently recorded a video about inconsistency of propaganda. And in this story about adoption, we see that inconsistency again, because if you think that this is such a good thing to adopt a child from Ukraine, it's such a fucked up state, Nazi regime, Zelensky is just a failure, and people are suffering there. So if you adopt a child, a poor child from an orphanage from that kind of country, you make this child happy, and it's such a good thing. You should be proud of it. If you should be proud of it, and they promote that kind of those kind of adoptions on like TV, and they ask people actually to adopt. So if you are supposed to be proud of that, why would you hide it? Why wouldn't you like talk to journalists? And so back in your mind, you understand that you actually kidnapped a kid. You understand that you did a bad thing, and you understand that there will be consequences for that, potentially. So that's why they are hiding stuff like that, although it contradicts the narrative about how open-hearted and kind Russian people are, and they're just welcoming so-called new regions and new people and and just they're ready to adopt every children. And so that was the first narrative. Ukraine bombs itself. The second narrative is Ukraine kills innocent people with the help of West. And this is, on the one hand, it's an old narrative, and on the other hand, it's a new narrative. So why is it an old narrative? Because since different kind of revolutions began in Ukraine, you remember the Orange Revolution and then the Revolution of Dignity, that was one of the main narratives, Kremlin narratives about Ukraine, that all those revolutions, whatever happens in Ukraine, when they want to change the president, when they want to change something in the country, it's all like inspired by West, and people are being manipulated by West, and people from the politicians from the West, they visit Kiev, and they give people something like that story about cookies, and so it was all backed by the West. So Ukrainian people are not capable of doing anything like that by themselves. They don't have their own will, they don't have their own opinion or energy or just capability of doing something like that. It should be, it's supposed to be backed by some big country like the United States. So United States is behind everything, and this is the old narrative. So whatever happens, United States or European countries, they are behind that. And why is it a new narrative? Because, as I said before, when the full-scale war in Ukraine started, they started pushing that narrative that Russia is fighting with the whole world. Russia is fighting with NATO. And actually, it's a very good, convenient excuse for them to explain their failures. And I heard it many times because I'm following some Russian propagandists, and I have to listen to them and read them. So I remember they were saying, for example, Margarita Simonyan, she was saying that no wonder we lost, for example, Kherson. I don't remember what she was talking about, or maybe it was about Kharkovskaya region, that counteroffensive in 2022. But the main idea was like, no wonder we lost this or that territory, because we are fighting with the whole world. We are fighting with like 55 countries, and Russia is alone, and no wonder things like that can happen. So it's a very very convenient excuse for them to explain their failures to people. Okay, so let me. These were two narratives, two main narratives, and I have two more. But let me look at the chat. Okay, the list of names on the flight was a list of previous prisoners of war that had already been exchanged. That's true, not all of them, but yes, Margarita Simonyan, the head of Russia Today, she posted today a list of 65 people. And after that, the independent media outlets, independent journalists, they found out, they found at least several last names from the previous exchange, so it doesn't add up. It's not a true list of those people who were on that plane. um okay, I believe it was Russian air defense. Yes, we had a message like that before. Uh, on a side note, 20 years ago, I didn't see Vitaly Klitschko being in a war outside the ring. I, I bet a lot of people didn't see Volodymyr Zelensky outside a movie or stage or something like that. Um, Propaganda, we have our own problems in Canada. Okay, we're not talking about Canada now, but and elections. It's a different topic. I'm sorry. So I will go on with narratives. Again, first narrative: Ukraine is bombing its own people. Second narrative: Ukraine kills innocent people with the help of West. And the third narrative: it happened because there was a political crisis in Ukraine and a conflict between Zelensky and Zaluzhny. And it's a new narrative. It's a new narrative. They use it. They started using it recently when the rumors about the conflict between Zelensky and Zaluzhny started appearing in the Ukrainian media, and that was a topic for discussion. But people came to the conclusion eventually that they were talking about the same things, but in a different, just in a different manner, in different phrases. But the main thing was the same. But anyway, Russia was very happy to see that discussion, and they tried to use it like in full capacity in propaganda. And now they pulled out that card out of sleeve again, and they started using it as a narrative. So several Russian propagandists on Telegram channel, in their Telegram channels, they mentioned that conflict between Zaluzhny and Zelensky, and they said that that's what they have, while they are conflicting with each other, and they are trying to find out like who is better, who is a better leader, or I don't know, and why while they have this kind of political crisis inside of Ukraine, they don't care about their own people, and that's why it's actually happened. And that goes to the main. This is the like puzzle piece to the bigger narrative about the Ukrainian internal politics, which says that Ukraine is a failed state. Ukrainian politics is a failure. The president is a failure. And the target audience, if you will, of that kind of fake, or I'm sorry, that kind of narrative, and fake news. There were a lot of fake news around that as well. That's why I said fake, because I just did a piece for Voice of America and I posted it on my channel about different fake news about Ukraine. So as I said, this narrative about that plane crash was caused by the crisis in Ukraine and the conflict between Zelensky and Zaluzhny. This is a puzzle piece of a bigger picture, bigger narrative about Ukraine as a failed state. And the target audience, as I said, is Ukrainian society, actually. Ukrainians, and they target Ukrainians here, Russian propaganda, because they want to say, like, look, your country is falling apart, like from inside. It's better it's better to not to be with Russia, because they understand that I don't know who wants to be with Russia now in Ukraine. There used to be people like that, but maybe they're very small amount now. But people are exhausted by war, which is understandable. And when you tell people, and they not only push the narrative, they not only they push the narrative outside Russia to the Western audience as well. And so when Ukrainians hear that from like different media from other countries, that kind of narrative, they maybe are supposed to like doubt what their president is doing, and if everything is like all right in the country, and maybe we should just agree that to those peace negotiations like Putin is talking about. So this is a narrative, a very important propaganda narrative that is targeting Ukrainian people, Ukrainian society, and this is a narrative about Ukrainian internal politics. And finally, a narrative number 4: West won't give Ukraine any more weapons. So they say that West, seeing that Ukraine used Patriots, and in Russia they claim it was Patriot or Iris-T. So they used that kind of weapon against people, against the humanitarian mission. So they just got out of control. And the West, seeing that, they will stop giving Ukraine the military aid. And this is also an old narrative. I mean, not very old, not from 2014. This is the narrative, or maybe from the started like Russia started pushing it from the second year, from the beginning of the second year of the full-scale war. Like the West will stop providing Ukraine with weapons if that or this or that happens, because and this is also like a puzzle piece of a bigger picture about that bigger narrative about the fatigue in the West, fatigue of war, and things like that. So if the Western countries see how Ukraine uses the weapons they are given, maybe the Western countries will change their mind about helping Ukraine, because you see they lost their minds, they got out of control, they are shutting down airplanes with people and stuff like that. So that was the fourth narrative. West won't give Ukraine any more weapons. And there is one more very important thing I wanted to mention, that already some different versions of what happened started to appear. For example, one of the versions in the Russian media is that there was someone on the board, on the plane already, with the explosives, with a bomb. So there was some person with a bomb on the plane, and they just exploded it from inside. And I read this version from some also Russian propagandist and kind of political analyst or something like that. So they were saying that there was one of the versions. And when that kind of versions start to appear, we can tell that they are trying to flood people with different kind of information, with different versions, to kind of disorient people. And it's also a sign of that working propaganda machine. It's sign of a propagandist campaign. Whatever happened, but we are analyzing now. We don't know what really happened. We will know later. But we can work with the material we have. We can work with those propaganda messages we see and read now. And I want to emphasize that I'm analyzing some already existing messages. And I can see, I agree with my colleagues from Realna Gazeta. I quoted today that as my colleagues, I also noticed the signs of planned and prepared a propaganda campaign. And for me and for other journalists and analysts, those signs are obvious. And it reminds me about actually the situation I referred to already, the situation with the plane MH17. And it was the exactly same thing. They were trying to flood the informational space, flood media and social media with all kinds of versions, sometimes like absolutely absurd and wild. Like, there was a version about MH17 that the people on that plane were already dead. So it was a plane like with dead people. And when they hit the plane and it crashed, the people actually didn't die because they were already dead. And there were a lot of versions like that, some conspiracy theories. And we know when we have that amount of version and different theories and conspiracy theories, we can tell that we are dealing with propaganda machine. We're dealing with the efforts of propaganda to prove that in that case it was like they were trying to prove that Russia is not behind it, and they were flooding media with different versions to disorient people, so people wouldn't even know like what to think, what to read, where to look for the information, like to feel them dizzy from all the information they have. And I feel that about that plane, Il-76, it's about to happen. The same thing is about to happen because already different versions and legends, people saw something with their own eyes. Of course, they couldn't see it on that. Some legends appear, so we can tell that something very similar is happening. And I want to say it again, that I see the signs of the efforts of propaganda machine working. Okay, let me look. What kind of internet is starting to lag? I'm sorry. Do you still hear me? Do you see me well? Let me know, please. Or is it on my side or not? So I don't see any new messages. Okay. So that's actually all I wanted to tell you. Main narratives main propaganda narratives um, about that airplane. And yes, as I said, they're trying to flood people with different versions. So yes, I'm about to wrap up. I will just read some messages. Will Russians that are against Putin go vote, or will they not go at all? Um, hmm. So those Russians who are against Putin, some of them, first of all, a lot of Russians who are against Putin are outside of Russia, and probably they won't vote outside of Russia. For example, I'm not going to vote. I still have Russian passport. I'm not going to vote because I don't want to legitimize that process. I don't think those elections are legitimate, and I don't want to take part in it. But there are some Russians in Russia and outside Russia who are going to vote, who are trying to like to support one of the candidates now, Boris Nadezhdin. And actually, I was you probably saw those lines. People are lining up to give him the signatures to sign for him. And I was going to dedicate a stream to that topic, to talk about Boris Nadezhdin, who he is, and why people decided to support him. And I know actually people in Russia, some of my friends, they had the same opinion as I do. Like, we don't want to take part in those elections. We don't want to legitimize that process. But this year they were like, okay, I don't like this guy Nadezhdin, and I don't think it's like a real election, but I will go and support Nadezhdin, just to support someone, but not Putin. Just to do something that potentially could help, like put Putin down. So I don't know, and I was going to talk about that. It's a very very interesting topic about the expectations and the society, and about Boris Nadezhdin himself, and about different candidates in the past who were kind of against Putin, in opposition to Putin, but they were like fake candidates. So we will talk about it next week, unless something else happens. But I'm going to talk about the elections, so-called elections, in Russia. Internet is slightly choppy. It shouldn't be. I'm sorry. Do they teach propaganda methods in university? Is it a course or study for the journalists? Actually, it's not a joke. Mike is asking. I don't know. Was it a joke from his side, or he's being serious? But they started recently doing something. I don't want. I don't want to give you some wrong information, but recently, I need to look it up. But recently, in some of the universities, in the journalism faculties, they started the program about informational wars or something like that. I will look it up, because I just forgot the name of the particular universities, and I forgot the name of the particular programs. But yes, they do have something like that. But the thing is, they don't admit that it's propaganda, is teaching people propaganda. They think that they teach people like counter propaganda, or they teach people how to be a good journalist, how to tell the truth. But in fact, they're teaching people how to be propagandists. But there are some new programs. I'll try to look it up. Okay, not a joke. Yes. Looks fine from here. Informational warfare. Yes, but I mean, I don't remember. I know the name of the thing itself, but I don't remember the program. There was a particular program, and I remember I was mentioning it in my podcast or something like that, because I have a daily podcast about Ukraine in Russian. Unfortunately, not in English, in the Russian language, where I tell people all the news about the war in Ukraine. So yes, I mentioned some program, but I don't remember. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So next week, I hope we'll discuss the elections in Russia and Boris Nadezhdin, and why people are lining up to give him their votes, to support him. Also, I don't want to promise, but I was going to do a birthday live stream, because I have a birthday on Sunday, this coming Sunday, and I was going to do a birthday live stream just to talk about like my life, my career, and you guys can ask me some personal questions, like about my hobbies, about my family, about my pets, whatever you want to ask, about dancing. I love talking about dancing. And so I was going to do some kind of, if I'm not too busy like celebrating my birthday, I probably will do my birthday live stream. That was the second announcement. And the third announcement, I remind you that, and I will post a separate video about that, but I remind you just in case that January 30th, I have a public lecture in Washington, D.C. About the homophobic rhetoric of Putin and Kremlin and Russian propaganda. And it's very, very, very relevant right now, because there are a lot of repressions against LGBTQ people in Russia. It's very serious. On the one hand, it might look like funny, because there are a lot of like absolutely absurd news, like about that sock story. So, but on the other hand, there are like serious repressions in Russia against those people, and they are in real danger. And I will talk about how they came to a situation like that, what led to a situation like that in terms of language, how how language, the speech, the statements they made, that led to that level of hatred against those people in the society, first of all, because Russian society is very homophobic society, and how Putin is using that rhetoric because he's the main homophobic person in Russia, and so he encourages people to be homophobic by his statements. So I will analyze all that. It's very interesting, and you are welcome. It will be January 30th. I will put the announcement in my community, so you will see that photo. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. No, my speech won't be live streamed because you need to buy a ticket to listen to it. If I won't catch you, happy birthday. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So next week, elections, Sunday, birthday stream, and next Tuesday, my lecture about homophobic rhetoric in Russia. Thank you so much for watching me. Thank you. Bye.